Hi, I'm Jordan Thorne, and we're here at Greenbuild 2019. Today I'm joined by Dr. Whitney Gray. She's the SVP at International Well Building Institute. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Amazing. So can you briefly talk about how you came to be in your current role?
Yeah, so my background in PhD, my nerdum comes from public health. And so if you hear public health or medical professionals talk about health issues, there's problems. Everyone is obese, a third of the population, respiratory issues, cardiovascular disease. And all of a sudden the green building movement happened, and they weren't about only problems, they were about solutions. And so I saw a documentary called The Next Industrial Revolution, which was years ago with William McDonough, and Judith Heerwagen was on it as a researcher. And she said green buildings could make people more healthy and productive. And I thought, well, that's not a problem. You know, in the world called Let's Fix Diseases, it said this was actually looking at health and well-being. Like you could actually create a place for health. And this fascinated me. And so I became kind of a designer groupie, like that person that follows designers around and hangs out with them, but isn't a designer by training. And I became really fascinated in how these creative approaches to actually building healthy places that solved public health problems, but not just for those that were having the issue, like the 30% of the population obese, but 100% of the population that occupied this space. So we moved from diseases into actual health promotion and wellness.
Okay.
And I think design played an unbelievable role in creativity, right? They were willing to look at things in a much bigger way. They didn't have the same barriers to it. And so I have changed jobs so many times. I come up with my own title way too many times. I don't think anyone, like early on, I had no friends at Greenbuild. I was like, health, health, health. And they're like, yeah, health, right.
Yeah.
And now 10 years later, we have a Health and Wellness Summit.
Yep.
I'm really excited to be part of the Well Building Institute and their team.
Amazing.
And so I think everyone, I like to say in the heart of their hearts, they were very interested one way or the other in sustainability for human health and environmental health. But it's taken us a little time to get there, but I don't think there's a better audience to develop and design healthy spaces the way this community does. And so I've long been an advocate of being part of this work, and I think that's kind of been the journey that's taken me here. And now I have tons of friends here, which is fun, you know, and I think a lot of people are really on this campaign for health and maybe in some ways always have been.
Sounds incredible. So that's sort of where your sustainability passion has come from.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
And so, you know, how does the focus on improving health and wellness through building design fit into the sustainability conversation? Why should companies invest in making their businesses more green and wellness conscious?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is making those separate.
Okay.
So human sustainability and environmental sustainability are not separate. In fact, what happened after the 1972 OPEC oil crisis is they blamed buildings for being huge energy suckers. And one of the things we did was we tightened buildings up. And now here comes sick building syndrome, which had never been determined or diagnosed until the 1980s, which is a host of 10 symptoms that display while at work and dissipate while you leave. Itchy eyes, itchy skin, inability to focus, things like that. So talk about an example of how we are not meant to be separate. You can't make an energy efficient building for people who can't inhabit the building.
Interesting, wow.
And likewise, there's so many examples even today where on a very, I think a realistic scale, a lot of women have the summer flu because they go into a building that's overly air conditioned.
Yeah.
And so if you really get into the human health perspective, you'd understand that this is a comfort issue and an environmental issue. And so I really encourage, you know, our audiences to not consider them separate at all, not consider that you get energy or give energy by getting or giving health, because actually you just create a problem for someone else. And I actually say that sustainability is for the future generations. I actually love the word resiliency. It's used a lot for buildings with sort of this idea of natural or human disaster, but resiliency of humans means that, you know, we will be able to survive, understanding that a lot will come down our path, and we'll create a more resilient environment and more resilient population to be able to adapt to the stressors. And so we have got to take care of the system because we all will work with inside of that. And I think the words sustainability, resilience, and thrive are very important. And it's a huge disservice to separate the human from the sustainability part of it, because I think they're one and the same.
Amazing. So it's the idea of sort of marrying the two in order to get to that sustainability kind of wellness idea.
Yeah, we were never separate. I kind of joke, but the history in this space, in the fields where, like urban planning, if you know, so Olmsted was the developer of Central Park.
Okay.
And at the time, this is when cities were super dense and tenant spaces, and Central Park was the lungs of the city. This was during the cholera epidemic, right? People didn't understand how diseases spread.
Yeah.
And Olmsted went on to found the Sanitary Commission.
Oh, wow.
So he's an urban planner. So public health and urban planning always work together.
Wow.
And I sort of joke that we went to high school and we fell in love and we were supposed to get married, but we sort of broke up. The 1950s came, and all of a sudden medicine and health was all about pharmaceuticals and vaccines and technology for the individual and fixing problems as diseases.
Yeah.
And now in 2000, I like to think that, we've come back, we're getting married, we've come back together, and we've joined forces because I don't think we were ever really separate. But now there's a real push to say, okay, cardiovascular disease, respiratory illnesses, cancers, right? Injury is that we can't solve them by fixing you at the hospital with a drug. Right? You have to think about changing your behavior, and you have to look at the environments in which those behaviors are occurring. So income designers and architects there have been surgeon generals have come forward to say, like, you are public health advocates. Like, we desperately need you to be part of this. And so I do think we're not separate at all. We're actually very much together and aligned, and it does, I think, the industry service to make sure that those are not separated and that we are aligned together.
Amazing. It sounds like it's almost like a preventative way.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to prevent disease.
Absolutely.
You don't want to treat disease.
Once it happens, absolutely.
That's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
And the same thing with, climate change.
Yeah.
You want to prevent it. You
Absolutely.
don't want to treat it once it happens.
Yeah. Very true. And so, can you talk a bit about why a holistic approach to sustainability has made such a big impact on the overall well-being and productivity of employees and kind of people in general in buildings, kind of living everyday life?
Yeah, the biggest part of this is you spend 90% of your time indoors. So if you're 40, that's 36 years of your life. You spend 90,000 hours working. And if you don't think that the environments that you spend time in will impact your health, then you are sorely mistaken. We even understand that on a genetic level. So about 70% of your determinants are going to be your social and behavioral environments. And a very small part of that's your genetics. And your environment's going to impact those too.
Okay.
Epigenetics.
Yeah.
So a holistic approach, I don't think, is optional. So this is the majority of your life will be spent indoors. I consider this the indoor generation. So instead of thinking that's a bad thing, how can we actually create environments that are protective and preventative? And so absolutely, I think the smartest companies understand that the most expensive and largest asset they have isn't the building. The building is part of the community they're building, which is the people. And people are over 90% of the assets, right? Not the cost, the assets. So if you don't have happy, healthy workers who can focus. I mean, we understand the stats of obesity. We know that you can be like upwards of 10,000 or more per year just on absenteeism, right? So we understand they use more medical cost, right? So, and this employee most likely doesn't necessarily want to be handling that issue in that way. They probably are seeking out, hopefully, a more healthy strategy. So employers that are like, I don't care, you do you, I don't care what you eat, I don't care what you breathe, as long as you perform. This is the idea of the turn of the century where we produced widgets. The smartest companies understand that if your workers aren't healthy, your business won't be healthy. And you actually have a huge risk that you are putting out to your shareholders and stockholders of, look, I have an unhealthy workforce that's not going to be as resilient when something occurs. I haven't taken care of them. So the likelihood of turnover and ability to really have high, stock price. And we've seen this. We're starting to see this more with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Additional research that's coming out, I'd say HERO is an incredible resource that's saying, if you invest in your employees, if they have high performance and health and well-being assessments, they're outperforming the S&P index by 235%.
Wow.
So, okay, that's huge. So investing in place means that that's where your employees will spend the majority of their time. Therefore, you're investing in people and you're investing in your company. And I can't stress the word investment enough and not payment.
Okay.
And I know you want to talk about business case a little bit, so is it okay to jump into that question?
Yeah, sure. Not a problem. That actually is sort of the next question. So the idea that, leaders, even if, I guess sort of the question I had was around leaders that might have a more ethical agenda, so they really believe in the sustainable movement and sort of the idea of investing in your employees. But maybe sort of their biggest stakeholders have trouble seeing past that bottom line or the ROI, because it is still true that though, as you point out, there are some clear indicators towards that it is a kind of a proven success. Some stakeholders still sort of struggle to see that, or to say, oh, well, maybe later, not right now. So how can you sort of build a business case for getting them to buy into that?
Yeah, so I would reference the innovation curve.
Okay.
So not all stakeholders are the same size and shape.
Yeah.
So in the innovation curve, you have the 2.5%, and they will adapt the fastest. These are the people that will stand outside an Apple store overnight in the rain in order to get the newest model. And then as you move through the innovation curve, you start to get to status quo, and then you start to move to the laggards, right, side of it. The laggards still have like a Nokia phone, or like they dial up and refuse to have a mobile phone. Right? So it's not one size fits all. And people are like, what's the business case? Well, the innovators are going to have a very different perspective than the laggards in this. And that's really important. I've heard people say, whether we agree or not, is that when someone asks you about the business case, they're almost asking for a reason not to do it.
Okay, interesting.
And that is interesting.
Yeah.
So know where they are on this curve.
Okay.
The innovators are going to want to be first to demonstrate their investment. The laggards are going to want proof that it works from someone else.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's one size fits all. I think when you say what's the value of a building certification, you might already be walking down this path of someone wanting an answer, which I think is a complete disservice if any building standard out there says, we're cheap and easy. I don't want any health standard to say, we're cheap and easy.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the doctor and have the doctor be like, well, I have a quality program, you might have to change some of your behavior and really commit to your health. It's going to take a couple of years potentially, but I really think this will help your longevity. Or today, take this cheap and easy pill.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So these words are important. So what I was stressing before is investment in health, investment in people. What does that word symbolize? It symbolizes you put money down in order to get money later. Responsible people invest. People are not responsible, spend, you know, and buy cheap and easy. So I think there's a model for some of those laggards, right? Where we start thinking, you want the cheap and easy versus the investment in health. And don't ask me for something that's going to happen yesterday. This will be an investment, just like everything else on your books. And so let's get real about that investment. What's phase 1? What's phase 2? What's phase 3? Right? Where are you at today? Where are you going to go? Just like a financial advisor, you meet with an expert that understands well and understands what a healthy building is, and they'll tell you, where are you today? Where are you tomorrow? And if you want to have a healthy organization, here's where you need to invest. It won't be cheap and easy. This is going to be an investment in health. And I think you understand who you're talking to, where in the innovation curve, so you understand how to use data most powerfully to help those different groups.
Amazing. And do you think that approaching kind of stakeholders, as you mentioned, there's kind of a variety of different types. Do you think there's this idea of like return on investment, but also a different kind of return? So it's sort of a return on like satisfaction. Can you have a different kind of return that would work for a stakeholder, or does it really need to be sort of bottom line based?
Of course not. I mean, of course, that's the whole conversation, right? So I think but the return on investment is a good term. That I've invested in this. What am I getting? I think that when you talk to sustainability experts 15 years ago and you said, how do you measure energy? And I know colleagues that said, well, I have 2 file folders on my computer. That's what I use to measure energy. And now I have 140. And they're reporting to environmental social governance, ratings, and they're saying I have 140 folders. I have sub-metering, right? This isn't one light switch for the entire room. This is really rethinking about how I monitor, the utilities that I work with, how I capture, how I do this in a more effective, dynamic way. So, okay, we're at the beginning of this in many ways with health. So you might just have 2 file folders, and those 2 file folders for you may be in HR. So if you're coming in as a sustainability expert or corporate real estate, this might be a new file folder for you. But capture that investment, because I know on average what we're spending per person on people, right? So if you have an organization over 1,000 people, you're going to most likely provide employee assistance programs and workplace wellness programs. Those on average, we're looking at upwards of $742 a year is offered around workplace wellness programs. About 30% above your salary will be your benefits. About 15%, 7 to 21% of people ever use these benefits.
Wow.
Right? So it's given to you.
Yeah, but it's just sort of sitting there.
So I know what the cost per person is. But oftentimes when sustainability people or maybe designers would come and say, well, what's the business case of a healthy building? I'm like, you haven't opened up these file folders. They might be over here with HR. They might be over here with your CFO. So we know with Integrated Benefits Institute in the next 5 years that 99% of the Fortune 500 CEFOs said, I'm going to invest in health. And then you ask them, are you going to measure the impact? And 6% said they're going to look at the ROI.
Okay, wow.
So this is just getting savvy. The real barrier is not the business case.
Okay.
The real barrier, I think, is understanding access to data, understanding what people need to be at the table, understanding how to ask for that data. So this is not a building that's cost per square foot. This is a building that's cost per person.
Okay.
And now you start to say cost, value, and investment per person.
Okay, sounds interesting. And do you have maybe one killer fact that could get any business to buy into sustainability?
I love that you wrote killer and you're asking a health professional to ask a question. I was sort of like, I feel like you're answering a question. Like, you will die if you don't do this. That's the killing fact. So I think that it is a huge disservice to look at human health and environmental health separately, number one. It's a huge disservice to look at as an option. I'd rather see it as a risk. Right? You know that you should be doing this.
Yep.
You have the opportunity to do it. You're choosing not to. You understand what your risk is. So it's not, what do I get if I pay for this? So did I get what, it's not, okay, if I pay this much, I get this much more, but it's, did I get what I'm paying for to begin with?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the important part for me, is that you don't separate the two. It's non-optional. You reduce risk, reduce politics. There's a lot of like, why aren't you this? Or there's a lot of like health shaming. There's a lot of environmental shaming that just needs to get gone. It really needs to get gone. It doesn't service anyone, because what it says is you don't belong in my tribe unless you look a certain way, right? Unless you epitomize health, or unless you are environmentally responsible. But the people we need in this conversation are people that are constantly dealing with their weight and mental health because they're on a wellness journey and they care more than someone who's maybe never had to look at it. Or someone that's interested in environmentalism and just starts, like, you know, Barack Obama said, recycling. I mean, that seems like a 10-year ago, 20-year ago concept. Well, it's a sticky behavior. It's a gateway behavior. It's something you can do small. So don't consider this separate. Don't consider this as an option. Consider it as a risk if you don't do it. And I think understand that this is not political. This is not something, this should be open to absolutely everyone. And so it has to be, in my brain, very win-win. And we have to get very humble in understanding that our message is not for other people that speak our language. It's for people who don't speak our language and need to be invited and not told.
I love that perspective. That's great, very inclusive.
Very inclusive. Actually, I heard a great quote the other day that workplaces are all about diversity. This is a little separate from our topic, but workplaces are about diversity, and diversity celebrates differences, but inclusivity is how you use those differences.
Interesting.
So you can have a very diverse population, and people can be all sizes, shapes, colors, and backgrounds, but that doesn't mean you work together.
Wow.
And so I think it's what you do with the diversity coming to the table, and not just trying to bring diversity.
It's interesting. I don't think people talk about that enough, really. Sort of it's always about sort of diversity, bring that in, but again, how do you bring people together to then further, you know, the ideas and
if you're a young woman in the room,
Yeah.
right, then what are you? You're a woman in the room.
Yeah.
Are you part of actually making an impact?
Yeah.
That's the question that needs to be asked, because being different's not enough.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think the workplace might look like 10 to 20 years from now?
I love this question. I'll still be alive. That's great.
Yeah.
So I feel like people are like 100 years from now. And
No,
you're like, wow, that's a long ways. So the workplace of the future for me is going to be conceptually about community and creativity. So it's about the healthy choice being the easy choice.
Okay.
So right now, think of the top 10 things that make health hard. So for a lot of people, it's expensive. It's time consuming. I don't have time to go to the gym. I want to spend time with my family. I don't have time to go shopping. Healthy food doesn't taste very good, right? Like, you know, water purification is too expensive. You have 1,000 reasons. So those reasons are going to start to like tick down.
Okay.
So our work with the well building standard, for example, is going to just start to remove those barriers one by one. And the Office of the Future is going to remove those. So the healthy food just becomes the easy option on site that tastes wonderful and is less expensive and it's available and you grow it. IoT, the world, right? Internet of things, and Internet of wellness, we like to say, but also artificial intelligence. So what we understand a lot in this world is that very good at rote tasks, right? We're programming them to do rote tasks. There's a lot of things we really don't want to do. We really don't want to do them. So before we have this conversation like they'll take over the world, let's think what they don't do. And creativity is something that humans do incredibly well. We connect disparate thoughts in new ways. So offices that understand we're going to be reducing those trite and rote tasks, we're going to be outsourcing those, we're going to start seeing technology come in, and we're going to have to focus on creativity. And there's a way that you program the brain to be creative. And I can tell you right now the top 10 ways that I can make sure that you weren't creative, right? And we create spaces for that or against that. And so I think the leading companies are going to really figure out that their talent is going to have to be creative. The second thing is community, which I mentioned. So workplaces, it's interesting is that for a lot of people, when you say like, where do you go to get work done? They say home.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's very true.
Right? Yeah. Because in workplaces, we're seeing stats every 3 minutes, you get interrupted just by something, right? And so how do you create a workplace that you want to go to for community? So maybe workplaces are about community. And this is really important because one of the leading factors that we're looking at for premature mortality right now is isolation.
Wow, interesting.
And you can be isolated but live in an apartment building full of people.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, so isolation, we look at social capital, right? How many relationships do you have? Who cares if you're gone? Who cares if you're showing up and you're, not shaved and you're like miskempt, and all of a sudden these can be signs of addiction or not able to focus or you're not socially engaged. There's a big opioid crisis right now, right? These are isolation factors. You can hide at home. But all of a sudden, workplaces are creating community, right? Someone cares about you when you come in. They can see how you're doing. You are showing up. And this is a massive resiliency issue. So we're increasingly seeing workplaces sell benefits, like you can work from home.
Yeah.
It sounds nice. The research is saying about once a week is fine, some flexibility. But the problem is we never evolved in our 200,000 years of being a Homo sapien to be in isolation.
Yeah.
We actually are horrible at it. And so buildings serve the role of creating community.
Yep.
And it has to be done strategically. So I think my hope is in the future is the healthy choice will be the easy choice, that there will be an outdoor and indoor environment, so we're going to bring the outdoors in, and by doing so create community, and those communities be more resilient.
Okay.
And I just can't help but say it, is that I think that we're going to really see what happens in this isolation conversation around technology. And we're already seeing this, or savvy people say technology is powerful, incredible, unbelievable, but also human contact is critical.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't think it's either or. I just think you're going to start seeing this dynamic, like the most creative ideas are going to happen in person.
Yeah.
And we're going to see workplaces figure out that is something that cannot just be a teleconference or a text.
Yeah, really interesting. Because I mean, if you think of like a building, you have tons of bodies in it. There's people all around, but yet we still sort of feel like if we get away and we sort of have a quiet space, that's the solution. But sort of you're saying, if we think about it better, and kind of really creates creative solutions, that we can achieve, more in a community setting.
Just try working from home, alone. No spouse, no friend, no cat, no dog for 1 week.
Yeah.
And just see.
Maybe no phone access as well.
No, particularly in a city, right?
Okay,
where you're not, you don't have that same access to nature.
Yeah.
That can be extremely isolating, right? We are very social. We're not the same person in the morning that we are in the evening.
Yeah.
Some of us love deep, quiet time in the morning and then want to be active in the afternoon. Right, so we need diversity and dynamic and community.
Yeah.
We seek it out. These are the people that work from home that are on conference calls and don't want to get off the line.
Yeah.
Right, they're like, oh no, talk to me some
Yeah.
more. So yes, this idea, like just try that process for a week and then understand that maybe we are meant to be in community, but we have to get a lot more savvy that the workplaces are not one size fits all.
Absolutely.
Right, we're not one shape, we're not one size, we're not one gender, we're not one background.
Yeah.
So choice will be key.
Okay.
Choice and community and creativity. So maybe it's the 3 C's that I'll say.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yes.
great. Perfect. And just to finish off, I'd love to know, why do you get up and do what you do?
Yeah, I love that question. I was like, coffee?
It's a start for sure.
So why do I get up and do what I do? Because I'm so fascinated, I think, in human evolution in the indoor environment. We are under an incredible living laboratory experiment of how we live best. And there are some people that really get it. And the people that get it, you want to be around them. They have something, right? They have a way, they have a grace, they have a spark, they have a connection with people. And they are living this incredible space and life, and you want to be part of that. And we have an opportunity to actually create the spaces that allow people to flourish.
Yeah.
And I think the words flourish and thrive are so, don't you want those?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like, yes, I want those. And this audience of people are willing to take the chance to do that. I think, coming from the world of public health, you know, it's like you wake up to, what's the problem today, right?
Yeah.
In politics, you know, there's a very different dynamic at stake. But I love designers and architects and sustainability experts that are willing to say, no, we can actually create change. We can, you know, there's no barriers, it's just our imagination.
Yeah.
And so I love working with those individuals because honestly, they shine. And I think that we do create incredible examples of thriving, resilient populations. And that just rocks. So that's why I get up to do it.
Oh, I love that. It's amazing. I can feel even from your energy, like the excitement that you feel for the potential and sort of what the power of kind of living or being indoors and being creative and those solutions, what that can bring. So it's really interesting to speak with you.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you what's happening
it.
to your body right now being indoors in this environment.
Save it
That's
for
a
later.
different conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And I might take a jog around.
That would be really good.
But I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having this conversation. It was very insightful.